August 31st, 2025. So here we are already. The last day of, not of summer, but of August. Which kind of feels like summer, right? The end of summer. So I thought maybe what I'm going to do is just go for a little end of August garden tour for my own record keeping, comparative studies for the years ahead. And I thought I'd tell a little story that happened, I think 1996. 1996 in a little village, or in the area of a little village where the story took place. Little village deep in the jungles in the Amazon territory of Venezuela. Just on the outskirts of a community called Tama, where we had been living for a year or so. And some friends from Saskatchewan came down to Venezuela in the winter. Good time to get out of Saskatchewan. Came down and they were going to help me with a couple work projects. Not me so much, but get ourselves involved in a couple building projects. So 4 guys came down. One brought his wife and their child, all from the same church, Central Saskatchewan. Now, one of the guys was the youth pastor at the time, and he was also, I'm not going to say names, but I might, whatever, we'll see. Maybe I'll just say them, I won't even think I'm saying them. Anyways, the youth pastor was afraid of snakes. We'll call him Keith. So the kids in the youth group, knowing that Keith was afraid of snakes, went out and bought one of those very lifelike rubber snakes that are about 3 feet long, maybe 4 feet long, probably more like 3 feet long. Very lifelike. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Kind of a soft, spongy type of rubber. And they sent it along with one of the other men with the idea, because we're going to literally heading down to the Amazon jungle. And so, well, where is anywhere famous for snakes on the Western Hemisphere, but perhaps the Amazon jungle? So they came down and we were working pretty hard. Not terrible hard, but doing our job. And then I said to them, listen, there's a hike. It takes about an hour to get to the top of this, I don't want to call it a mountain, but I'll call it a ridge. And once you walk up the back end of this ridge and you get to the top of it, all of a sudden the face of it just falls away into a deep valley. And it's quite stunning. But beyond that, when you get to the top of this ridge, you can see a mountain, the face of a mountain, which would have been many, many miles away, probably 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 miles away. I don't know. Probably more like 50 miles away. A big mountain, and the mountains in Venezuela are pretty unique, compared to the Rockies. They're very different. So anyways, what was unique about this mountain is the face of it looked like George Washington, like George Washington's profile. It was just unmistakable. I'll go with that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyone that saw it could see George Washington's profile on that mountain. And because we lived just 4 degrees north of the equator, the sun didn't set wildly to the west and wildly to the east, or to the north and south like it does in Canada. But it's, the difference between a long day and a short day was about 20 minutes, not several hours like in Canada. So the sun basically rose and set almost in the same place, very close to the same place all the time. So it was predictable that the sun was going to set behind this mountain that looked like George Washington. So we scampered up that mountain, and I'll tell you what, for me, I'd done it so many times. First time I went up there, it almost killed me. I went up there with a bunch of the high school kids. They, of course, were in good shape. I mean, I wasn't in bad shape. But when you're starting to climb rock faces and stuff, and you're in a really hot, humid environment to begin with, I found out I was in bad shape. But I made it. Made it at the top of the mountain with those kids. And then we went up another time at night, took our flashlights and went up there and came back in the dark. And I was like, to me, that seemed pretty stupid. And then after that, I took many, many people up that mountain. I became the guide. I probably went up there more than anybody. I'm not saying overall, but certainly more than anybody during the time I was there. I was up there so many times. I took these canoers up from England, and boy, they just about died too, because they're used to paddling, not climbing mountains. So anyways, the four guys from Canada and myself, the guide, hiked up there, and we left a little bit too late, because it's a tough walk up there, really it is. And we made it up there just at dusk. And we got to watch the sunset behind George Washington, just as promised. And it was beautiful. And so here's the four of us, and I'd never spent the night up there. I was up there one evening in the dark, but I had never spent a night up there. So, of course, here's 5 guys up there with a little, whatever we took, a blanket, a little pillow, something to sleep on. The top of that was all rock up there. Basically just a great big solid, kind of a dark gray rock. So, of course, the conversation got around to, so what's up here at night, Alan? Well, I've been up here so many times, guys. I've never seen anything except one time I was up here and I saw some like cute tree frogs. Tree frogs can be poisonous, I think, a lot of them, and those ones probably were, but we didn't see any. So I'm like, no, it's all good. We should be good. I mean, that was totally ignorant. I had no idea if we'd be good or not. I didn't know if there was a puma, a leopard, something in that area, because they were. I mean, we're dead in the middle of the bloody Amazon jungle. Of course there's critters out there. At any rate, I convinced them that all would be safe. So we started hunkering down and got our little sleeping areas close to each other, of course, all hunkered out. And we were talking away. And now it was not dark, but I haven't even had a drink of my wine yet. But it was dark. We could still see each other. But, you know, it was getting not so easy to see each other's finer details. And all of a sudden, Keith, the youth pastor, who was sitting not more than 3-4 feet from me, felt something crawling. I don't know if it came off his head or off his shoulder. I forget the details now. But anyway, something was on him, and he swatted it. And I forget if it fell onto his lap, but it certainly fell onto the ground. And he figured he had been bit or something by whatever this was. Of course, we had flashlights. So we got our flashlights out, and we're all looking for what on earth had crawled onto him and theoretically bit him. And we found a tarantula on the ground that was injured. So that was obviously the culprit. So poor Keith, the guy that was probably the most terrified of these critters, happened to be the guy that had the tarantula crawl on him at night on the top of a mountain in Venezuela, in the middle of the Amazon jungle, Venezuela's portion of it. So that didn't set things off really well. And Keith was just like, he was disturbed, understandably. And I took an interest in the tarantula because while I was down there, I started collecting spiders and bugs and all kinds of really interesting creatures, and I had quite a collection on the go. So I'm looking at this poor spider that's quite injured now, far more than Keith was, except his fear. And Keith got a bit mad that I took so much interest in the spider, as I recall. So that created quite a hullabaloo for like quite a few seconds, so maybe a minute. It was just like sort of wild. And it was at that point in time that one of the guys who had the snake and had the presence of mind to bring that rubber snake up the mountain, Keith had his sort of his little foamy blanket or whatever you want to call it, a little foam to lay on and a little kind of a blow up pillow and a blanket. We all took something similar to that up the hill. Well, whoever brought the snake up, and I didn't see who did this, but they took that snake and they coiled it on Keith's pillow. So Keith's back is facing his pillow. He's still freaked out about being attacked by a small tarantula. Believe me, there's no spider in Canada that's as big as a small tarantula. Nothing even close. So I say small tarantula, but we're talking a big spider for a Canadian dude, man. Big, big, big. Probably 4 inches across the legs for sure. Anyways, Keith finally settled down. He finally got back down on his knees, and he was just turning around and was going to the way you turn around when you're sleeping on the ground and you're on your knees and you're spinning his body around, and he's going to start laying his torso down onto the ground with his head towards the pillow. He turned around and he looked down at his pillow. He was probably maybe 2 feet from it because it's kind of dark. But at 2 feet away, his pillow was probably a lighter color, maybe a white or something. And here's this snake coiled up on his pillow. Well, I didn't even know this had happened. I was busy watching the spider and Keith. I didn't see this happen. So anyways, Keith saw this snake now coiled on his pillow. Well, the guy's already fried. He's just fried from a tarantula. Any one of us would have been. Nothing unique to Keith. And then the guys pulled this perfect timed, well, very funny, but not to Keith, snake routine. Keith saw that snake, and I'll tell you, it was like the man was a firecracker, or like a rocket. He went from almost getting to a laying position to not standing up, jumping up, like just exploding up and screaming, bloody hell. Like, the poor guy was already fried. And then that got added to his routine. Well, I looked down at what freaked him out so much, and then I saw the snake on the pillow. So I knew that the snake was fake. So I went over to the snake and I grabbed it, but I acted like it was real. So I went over to the snake and I grabbed it by the tail and I straightened it out, and then I threw it at him. Well, that was just the end of Keith. I will tell you, he was just fried. And any one of us would have been. So it's nothing special, particularly peculiar about Keith, except of all of us, he was maybe the most paranoid about the critters, and now he's been inflicted twice in probably less than 2 minutes by a tarantula, a real tarantula, and now a fake 3-foot snake that's just been thrown at him after he saw it and jumped to the moon to escape it. Well, we were roaring just hilariously, the 4 of us guys, at Keith's poor misfortune. We did all finally settle down, and Keith was actually a little bit disturbed. Not just disturbed, but perturbed, and understandably so. It was his expense, our joy, you could say. But I'll tell you, the rest of the night, none of us slept very soundly. Not one of us. Keith, I'm sure, every 15 minutes or less, he would turn on his flashlight, laying down, and just scanned everything around him. Everything around him, he would scan with his flashlight. I don't know how often he did it, but it seemed to me it was like every 15 minutes at the longest. So it was a long night for all of us. The sun goes down there about 6 in the evening. It doesn't come up till 6 in the morning. So an evening in Venezuela is a long, long evening. 12 hours of dark, my friend. So it was 12 hours of torture, mental, emotional, and physical torture for all of us. We lived to survive. And that is a crazy little story and a little garden view for myself to just see where things are at comparatively next year, whatever. All right, that's pretty long, but that's my story, and I am sticking to it.